Welcome back to the SOTI Connect How-To video series. With SOTI Connect, you can quickly discover, configure, and deploy new IoT-enabled devices regardless of the device make, model, or firmware, and much more. Hello, I'm MJ, Principal Instructor here at SOTI. In previous videos, we covered how to install SOTI Connect, configure protocol adapters, and enroll devices. In this video, I will show you how to set up SQL Server for SOTI Connect. So let's begin. Installing and setting up a SQL database for SOTI Connect is easy but requires various steps. First, find the downloaded SQL Server installer on your computer. Run the exe file and let the installer load. Once the installer loads, follow the next steps. Select the installation type as basic if you want to download the SQL Server and all of its utilities. You can also select custom installation type and go through the SQL Server installation wizard to choose what you want to install. Or you can select the download media to download the SQL Server setup files and install them later on a machine of your choice. For the purpose of this video, we will choose the basic installation type. Accept the license terms and conditions. You can choose the desired installation location. For the purpose of this video, we will keep this as default. Allow it to download and install all the SQL Server required packages. Once that's done, you will see the final page stating that the installation was successfully completed. Make note of the server address as you will need it later to install SOTI Connect. Assuming that you don't have SQL Server Management Studio on your computer, this tutorial provides you with the steps to install that as well. Before you close the SQL Server installer, make sure you have downloaded the SQL Server Management Studio. Once downloaded, find the exe file and run it. When the installer window opens, you can choose the desired installation location. For the purpose of this video, we will use the default settings. Allow it to download and install all required packages. Upon successful installation, you can see the Setup Completed screen. Finally, close all the applications and restart your computer. That completes the process for installing SQL Server and its utilities. Next, we'll set up SQL Server for SOTI Connect. Open the SQL Server Management Studio. Open a connection to the SQL Server instance by entering the server address you noted down. Once the SQL Server Management Studio successfully connects to your SQL instance, you will see the instance name on the list. The next step is to change the server authentication to SQL Server and Windows Authentication mode. Go to the Security page on the panel. Under Server Authentication, select SQL Server and Windows Authentication mode. Click OK to save your changes. Next, we need to determine if we want to use a local SQL account or a Windows account for our authentication. For our demonstration, we will create a local SQL account. Complete the following. Expand the security directory and create a new login. Give your login a valid and complex password and make sure the password policy is enforced so that the account is better secured. Next, navigate to the Server Roles tab and add the sysadmin role. Use this login for your database when installing SOTI Connect. Lastly, we will need to ensure that the NT authentication system login has role sysadmin. This login will be used if SOTI Connect is installed using Windows Authentication. Next, we need to enable TCP/IP and add some TCP ports. Run the SQL Configuration Manager utility that comes as part of the SQL Express package. Make sure you don't close the SQL Server Management Studio connection as we will need to come back to it later. On the SQL Configuration Manager, expand the SQL Server Network configuration and click Protocols for SQL Express, or your SOTI Connect SQL instance name if it's different. Empty any dynamic port information that is currently set and set the dynamic port to port 1433. Select Apply and save the changes, then click OK. Finally, restart your SQL Server instance from SQL Server Management Studio to apply all the changes made. And that's it. In just a few minutes, I've shown you how to install and set up SQL Server for SOTI Connect. so you can quickly discover, configure, and deploy new IoT-enabled devices regardless of the device make, model, firmware, and much more. Thank you for tuning in. Click subscribe to get the latest updates. To learn more about how the SOTI One platform reduces the cost, complexity, and downtime of your business-critical mobile and IoT operations, visit SOTI.net.